Hello and welcome. I've waited all morning waiting for a break in the rain to be able to record this so the audio is not just ruined. And also, I have a cold from being out in the storm, so if I sound a little different than normal, I am sorry. But we have a really exciting episode to talk about today. So let's talk about episode 40, Public Image. Our case number is CAT3RC A2-167-2311-1762-1006-2024. Puppet Reanimation. Fear Children. This is our second 3RC, I believe, the other one being episode 11, which is the one about the Oscar Jarrett tattoo and the waves and everything there. Definitely interesting there. If I've missed one, please let me know. But that was the only one that I could find that was another 3RC. Also, speaking of letting me know, thank you so much, as always, for your comments. Not only do they make my day, getting to see all the different theories and all the different thoughts and all the encouragement, thank you so much for that, but also things that I missed, perspectives that I don't personally have but should have been more aware of, and I thank you so much for that. Please continue to share your thoughts with me, because we're all in this together, right? So, this episode... phenomenal episode. I really want to go straight to Heinrich and Heimlich. I'm going to try not to do that. We're going to try and stay focused before the rain comes back because the storm is still ongoing. But Alice meets up with Dane Bowie of Starkwall, and together they're in Berlin. They're about to go meet Heinrich and Heimlich, and I want to go talk about Heinrich, but we got to talk about this Dane Bowie first. Unfortunately, Dane does not survive this episode, but there is one of a few different things going on here, right? I am of the opinion that Starkwall is a professional company, right? That they do a good job from the seams of it, or from the way it seems. That's how that phrase should be used. Forgive me, I do still have a cold. It seems to me, I mean, we've seen them be very competent before, right? They took down the Hilltop Center. We had Brett, who seemed to have, if not placed bugs in there, at least been in the office and knew the layout of the office already. They burned down the Institute, as far as we're aware. It seems like they did, at least. So they definitely seem competent. But Dane here is almost assuredly either a total newbie or he's just in it too much, right? Like, he really loves the idea of what he's doing. But there's another thing that I considered that, so in the SCP universe, there is a group that is too cool, basically. They're making new weird stuff, and they love it, and they're super in on it, and that's all they care about. They don't care how they're perceived by anybody else, right? And there was a weird thought I had where I was like, is this kind of like this, where he's using the tactical gear and he's got a big bushy beard and the sunglasses at night, and he's trying to look super cool, and it's just that this is their thing, and their like anomalous thing is because of it. I don't know that it fits really with the fears or anything, but it definitely was something that I considered. It's just as likely he's just a dork and he really likes the idea of being a Starkwall agent, and he's gone too far with it, right? He also is a little gun shy. He's a little jumpy, which is a strange... From what we saw of Brett, he definitely seemed like he knew what he was doing, right? So it feels weird for him to send somebody that is either green or too aggressive with it, right? It's also possible that Starkwall has been out of the loop for a little while, and they don't have anybody that's up on the externals like they used to be, but I feel like Dane is just an edge case, right? Maybe he's an agent they had, because he mentions a couple things about Berlin already. So maybe he's an agent they already had in Berlin, so they said, well, we'll use him, and he was just a dork. Hard to say. There's also some really interesting stuff here where Gwen talks about maybe it's time to hire some more people, and Celia and her have a conversation about it, and Celia pushes a little bit on when Gwen says somebody has to do the work, to ask, well, do we? Celia is still very curious about why the OIAR is doing what they're doing, and Gwen ignores the question. In that same way, Alice ignores Dane when he says that he needs to go secure the AO, and she enters Heinrich's workshop. So let's talk about Heinrich Unheimlich. Not only is he my favorite external so far, he's incredible, and I think he gives us more answers than I really thought that he would on how things work, right? It seems like, because he gives us his whole story, he is the toy, he is the toy maker, he is the workshop, all the same, right? Because he tells us his story of being a wooden doll with burned feet that delighted in giving splinters. Whether he was made anomalous or whether he became anomalous, whether he was something created by the fears or if he simply came into being because of fear, it's kind of hard to say. We know in the archives world the fears always were, right? That man became afraid, and it was some primal thing, that original fear of the dark and of the unknown that bloomed into everything else, right? Is that how it is in the protocol world? Or is it that it's more of a Tsukumogami kind of thing, where, hey, this thing has had fear attached to it for so long that it has begun to devour that fear, that the fear around it is so strong that it has brought life to it. A Tsukumogami, for anybody who doesn't know, is the idea of an item, normal mundane, I try to combine those words, a normal mundane item that has had time and overtime because of the attachment of people or because of any other emotion of the world around it, of anything in the world around it, has changed and become alive. You might know some of them as like the Kodama from Princess Mononoke, were Tsukumogami, right? Spirits of the forest that because of the things in the forest, they became alive. I don't know if they are in the movie or not, but in the book they are. But even something as simple as like this Baroth miniature that I keep on my desk from Monster Hunter World, I look at it every single day, you know. Would it come alive over time as my adoration for it filled it with a sense of belonging or need? And in that same way, like my inhaler that I keep on my desk all the time, that is the very symbol of not just hope, but also of fear with my asthma, would it be come alive because of the fear and feed upon that desperate grasp as I reach for it when I'm choking for breath, you know? The fear that it won't work for me or the fear that I won't be able to reach it in time, you know, things like that, basically. There's a couple different ways it could go. I believe it's probably going to wind up being the, hey, it was a being of the fear already, kind of like the dice or the violin or something like that, an object that the fears touched some way. But it would be really cool if the doll or the carriage just came alive because of the fear that was attached to them, right? I don't think that's what's happening here, but it would be really cool. Also, Heinrich wants to make video games. That's sick. I love that. So he was talking to Colin. He was very excited to meet Colin, but he doesn't seem upset to meet Alice. But he was talking to somebody before Colin, and I'm assuming that was probably either Klaus or when he talks about somebody like before. But how long ago was that before, really? Because I assume it's Klaus, but we don't really know how long ago it's been. When he talks about somebody working with Stasi, is that actually, or Stasi, is that actually an alchemist? Somebody from the Institute, you know? Albertus Magnus? Hard to say. Either way, we get his whole story, right? It's wonderful. It's great how the doll looked at you with hunger without any eyes as it hungered for the fear, delighted in giving splinters to children. That one day the girl and her parents were gone and all of the other children blamed the doll that had been left in the window, and that only made Heinrich Unheimlich grow. That he was given the song by this first girl and that she seemed to really enjoy scaring the other children, but it was their fear that fed him and allowed him to grow. Also, Hans made it grow further by giving the story of the toy maker, which then, of course, Heinrich took the form of the toy maker. He made Hans a hobby horse that Klaus was not afraid of, which might be the same Klaus and might not be, that we know of. And that then he had to ride the hobby horse and watch his parents get devoured by it. Bite, bite, bite. He says here the children who did not believe their parents would pay the price, right? Which is terrifying and would spread the terror more and make more children afraid, which was what he fed on. Dane gets really upset, saying that, hey, you killed children. He's like, well, sometimes, yeah, but a dead child can't feed me. Their tears and their fears have no effect. Also, he says here that when he had Isla, that the workshop changed because he would choose children to spread the story further, which is a terrifying idea. And because of the description, makes me think of the tall man, an old German legend of a tall man that would take children and kidnap them. Wonder if there's a little bit of inspiration there. Either way, he had a hut then, right? But now he has this old factory. Times have changed. People don't believe kids anymore, and other kids don't believe kids anymore. And change is scary, and is a scary word for a child. And he'll be there to feast on that fear when it comes. And so, of course, this definitely says that he was the one that ate the parents of the little girl that had gone to Germany. I didn't think we had any question as to whether or not that was the facts, but there we go. Yeah. Dane. He puts his hand on Heinrich to try and tell Heinrich that Alice is not going anywhere without him, when Heinrich offers for Alice to come and sit down in the chair that he bought for 60 pounds. I messed that one up too, trying to mix words up again. I'm sorry, I'm medicated right now. But this turns out to be a huge mistake. As fun as the chair is and all the jokes about the 60-pound chair are going to be, when Dane tries to step in, it's his job to protect Alice, right? Heinrich and Heimlich tells him to let go. He doesn't let go. Heinrich calls him an idiot, and then Dane is torn apart by toys. Alice does her best to hide her fear. She doesn't succeed fully. Heinrich tells her that her fear is youthful and pure, and then asks her to sit down again in the fancy chair that he bought for her. Now, he says. Originally, he bought it for Colin, No, he is terrifying in the best way. I absolutely love him. But also, he leaves us with so many more questions of, are all the externals like this? Did they start with an object and then become what they are today? I don't think so. I think some of them were people, right? Because we have Inksole that we know is a person. Needles was most likely a person, or at least Inksole was a person. We can't say that Inksole still is. Lady Mowbray was most likely a person to begin with, right? So yet again, are these items that were touched by the fears, or is it that they developed a taste for the fear because of the fear that was built up around them, and before you know it, they became consumed by it, and now they are an object of the fears? We still don't know how the fears work in this world. We're slowly learning more and more about how they work, and they're definitely still feeding, right? That's not just an error thing because the archivist had come through. They're still feeding. The violin still fed on fear. The dice still fed on fear. Lady Mowbray definitely still feeds on fear. Inksole feeds on fear. Needles feeds on fear. We know that they're still feeding. I guess Bonzo also, right, feeds on fear. The question is, how did they become what they are? We got that little bit with Bonzo where we had, I can't remember his name right now. I'm going to look it up, so there's going to be a cut here. I hate making cuts. Minky, that was his name. Minky, it seemed like the suit was slowly absorbing him because he was enjoying the fear as well. So is it possible that he would have become another Bonzo? But he had been touched by Bonzo, right? Not literally, I guess, but metaphorically, he had been touched. He'd been affected by Bonzo. And so he was poisoned by Bonzo's fear, right? The fear radiation that we see in the archives world. And so is that what's happening here, where the fear poisons an object and then it grows into a fear, or into something being touched by the fear? I guess it's not growing into a full-size fear, but I want to know. We're 40 episodes in. I want to know how this works, but I'm loving piecing together the pieces. And I don't think it's that the fear itself is what is making these things alive. I think it's that they were touched by fear at some point. I would have guessed it was the desolation that touched this doll because of the burned feet. But this doesn't feel as much like the desolation and more like the stranger with toys, right? So it's hard to say. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Poor Dane, right? If he was just a dork, poor Dane. But there's also just as much a chance that Dane is some kind of weird creature on his own. We don't know what Starkwall is doing. So we will see. I feel like we've seen the end of Dane. Dane Bowie, which is almost certainly a code name. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. The rain's coming back, so we're going to go ahead and end this now. But until next time, I've been Trey. This has been The Full Spectrum. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum Magnus has to offer. Also, real quick, I know that I already said goodbye and everything, but just want to mention, I think hearing Heinrich and Heimlich give the little poem, the little song, the little rhyme, was wonderful and a great choice in this episode. I absolutely adored the writing in this episode. I know I said goodbye already. I don't need to keep going, but the fear of children is like such a terrifying thing, right? And of course, there would be things that would feed upon it so well. You know, we saw that in Archives as well. And it just... I love this series. I'm very much looking forward to more. And this time I'm actually going to go... I think I covered everything that I wanted to talk about. But if I missed something, please do let me know. I feel like I'm missing something, but I've gone back over my notes twice. And I don't think I am. But either way, thanks again so much for watching. Later.